The relentless, omnipresent hum of the adjacent city, a complex symphony of traffic, construction, and distant sirens, usually faded into the subconscious white noise of daily life for Ava Reynolds. It was the auditory wallpaper of her existence in the transitional neighborhood bordering the sprawling Oak Haven Estates subdivision. But standing in the doorway connecting her small kitchen to her even smaller backyard on a crisp, hopeful September evening, the dominant sound wasn't the familiar urban drone. It was something far more localized, far more vibrant, and infinitely more satisfying. The rhythmic, percussive clatter and sharp scrape of polyurethane skateboard wheels rolling, sliding, and occasionally colliding with hard concrete surfaces. This energetic soundscape, punctuated frequently by the unmistakable whoop of youthful exuberance following a successfully landed trick, or the equally expressive, drawn-out groan of frustration after a painful fall, emanated directly from the formerly derelict, utterly neglected vacant lot situated immediately behind her property line. This long-forgotten patch of urban neglect, once a repository for blown trash and ambitious weeds, was now a space she had painstakingly, almost obsessively, transformed over the preceding 6 months from an embarrassing eyesore into a thriving, if admittedly rudimentary, free public skate park. Ava, by profession, was a graphic projection engineer, a creator of ephemeral magic on a grand scale. Her days were spent translating complex client visions into dazzling, large-scale visual experiences, mapping intricate animations onto towering building facades for corporate galas, projecting immersive environments onto stage sets for music festivals, transforming ordinary spaces into extraordinary canvases of light and illusion. Her work demanded a unique blend of artistic sensibility, technical precision, meticulous planning, and an almost preternatural understanding of how light, shadow, and structure interacted to shape perception. That same focused, detail-oriented energy, combined fortuitously with a significant surplus of high-grade, quick-setting concrete leftover from a major downtown civic art installation project she'd recently completed, material destined for costly disposal, had inadvertently fueled the skate park's unlikely genesis. What had begun spontaneously one spring afternoon as simply clearing waist-high weeds and hauling away illegally dumped tires from the long-neglected lot, an act born more of frustration with urban blight than any grand design, had gradually, organically evolved into something far more ambitious. Ava started by leveling a central section of the uneven ground. Then, experimenting with the leftover concrete and drawing on half-remembered physics principles and online skate park design forums, she began pouring smooth transitions between different levels, sculpting gently rideable banks along one edge, and eventually, with growing confidence and the enthusiastic, if sometimes clumsy, assistance of a few local teenagers drawn by the unusual activity, constructing a respectable, surprisingly functional concrete quarter pipe at the far end. It was all done during her precious evenings and weekends, fueled by lukewarm coffee, sheer determination, and the unexpected camaraderie forged with the kids who started showing up, initially curious, then eager to help, offering surprisingly insightful feedback on ramp angles and surface textures. The lot itself, a forgotten parcel officially owned by the city but ignored for decades due to ambiguous zoning designations left over from defunct industrial plans and perpetual municipal budget shortfalls, had previously been a genuine neighborhood liability. It served primarily as an unofficial dumping ground for discarded mattresses and construction debris, a haven for waist-high weeds that spilled onto neighboring properties, and occasionally, a shadowy spot for less savory nighttime activities. Now, thanks to Ava's initiative and the reclaimed concrete, it pulsed with positive energy. Teenagers from diverse backgrounds, kids who might otherwise be drifting aimlessly through the concrete jungle, glued to screens indoors, or perhaps congregating in far less constructive or safe locations, now had a dedicated place to channel their boundless physical energy, practice their demanding athletic skills, forge unlikely friendships across social divides, and learn valuable lessons about perseverance, mutual respect, and creative expression. Ava, driven partly by a sense of civic responsibility and partly by a desire to protect the nascent community space, had installed a couple of sturdy, weatherproof, solar-powered motion-activated security cameras high on poles overlooking the lot. Ostensibly, their purpose was to deter vandalism or any return of the previous illicit uses. But Ava readily admitted to herself, scrolling through the recorded footage each night, that she also derived a deep, quiet satisfaction from watching the captured evidence of the space being used exactly as intended. Kids skating, laughing, pushing their limits, occasionally falling hard, but almost always being helped up immediately by their peers. It was a far cry from the depressing images of dumped trash and lurking figures the cameras might have captured just a year prior. It felt like a small but profoundly significant victory for grassroots community improvement, achieved not through bureaucratic channels or hefty grants, but through personal initiative, sweat equity, and creatively repurposed industrial materials. This positive, organic transformation, however, celebrated by the teens and quietly appreciated by many immediate neighbors weary of the former eyesore, was viewed with undisguised, simmering hostility by one particularly influential resident, Loretta Caldwell. Loretta was the imperious, perpetually dissatisfied president of the adjacent, significantly more affluent Oakhaven Estates Homeowners Association. A woman whose carefully curated social ambitions and relentless pursuit of perceived status far outstripped the modest, localized prestige typically associated with managing suburban covenants and lawn regulations. Loretta resided in a large, ostentatiously landscaped Tudor-style house, whose upper windows offered a commanding, unwelcome view directly down onto the formerly vacant lot, now alive with the clatter and motion she found so offensive. She considered the nascent skate park, with its associated ambient noise, the entirely reasonable sounds of active teenagers enjoying themselves outdoors during daylight hours, sounds she invariably described as constant, grating racket, and its unapologetically functional aesthetic, smooth gray concrete curves optimized for flow and function rather than the manicured, chemically dependent flower beds she favored, to be both a personal affront to her sensibilities and a dangerous blight on the carefully cultivated image of serene, upper-middle-class tranquility she relentlessly sought to project for Oakhaven Estates. Loretta, never one to suffer in silence when she perceived an injustice, made her profound displeasure known early, often, and through multiple channels. Initially, shortly after the first ramps began to take shape, she tried wielding the Oakhaven Estates HOA rulebook like a blunt instrument, sending Ava a series of vaguely threatening, officiously worded letters delivered by certified mail. These letters cited obscure HOA bylaws regarding unapproved permanent structures, excessive noise generation, and attractive nuisances, conveniently ignoring the crucial fact, clearly delineated on publicly available plat maps Ava promptly provided in response, that the lot in question fell definitively outside the established boundaries, and therefore the legal jurisdiction, of the Oakhaven Estates HOA. When Ava politely but firmly pointed this out, highlighting the relevant property lines and Loretta's lack of standing, Loretta, incensed at being corrected, escalated her campaign. She began lodging formal, increasingly shrill complaints with the city's perpetually understaffed code enforcement department, alleging safety hazards, unauthorized construction, and environmental concerns. These complaints, too, after brief investigation and site visits, were summarily dismissed by city officials. The makeshift park, while unconventional, violated no existing municipal building codes or ordinances for recreational structures on public land, and Ava, anticipating such challenges, had proactively obtained tacit, if informal, approval from a sympathetic mid-level official in the city's parks department. This official, weary of decades of complaints about the neglected lot, was privately thrilled to see the space finally activated and serving a positive community purpose, even if through unconventional means. Thwarted through official bureaucratic channels, Loretta's simmering resentment towards Ava and the skate park festered, metastasizing into a personal vendetta. Her direct complaints to Ava ceased, but her negative campaign within her own sphere of influence intensified. She spoke dismissively and often inaccurately to anyone within Oakhaven Estates who would listen, painting lurid pictures of unsupervised juvenile delinquents engaging in supposed vandalism, despite Ava's cameras showing no such thing, lamenting the constant, deafening racket that shattered the neighborhood peace, conveniently omitting that the sounds were confined to daylight hours and were typical of active recreation, and hinting darkly about potential decreases in Oakhaven property values due to the proximity of such an undesirable element. Ava knew, however, through the reliable neighborhood grapevine, primarily Maria, her friendly next-door neighbor who occasionally attended Oakhaven's social events, that Loretta's vehement opposition likely stemmed from something far more tangible and self-serving than mere aesthetic displeasure or noise sensitivity. Loretta, it was well known, hosted lavish, elaborately catered wine-tasting galas and intimate political fundraisers at her expansive home several times a year. These events were crucial tools in her relentless campaign for social advancement and influence, carefully curated affairs designed to impress influential guests, local politicians, wealthy business owners, prominent socialites, and bolster her image as a sophisticated power broker. Her primary, recurring logistical nightmare for these high-stakes events was always, invariably, parking. Her own circular driveway and the immediate street frontage were perpetually insufficient to accommodate the fleets of gleaming luxury vehicles, Mercedes, BMWs, the occasional Bentley, her desired guest list invariably commanded. The vacant lot, situated directly across the narrow access lane from her property, represented, in Loretta's ruthlessly calculating eyes, the perfect, untapped, ideally located resource for convenient VIP overflow parking. A use she considered infinitely more appropriate, prestigious, and beneficial to her than a scruffy concrete playground for neighborhood teenagers she didn't even know. The skate park wasn't just an annoyance, it was a direct, physical obstacle to her social climbing ambitions. Ava sensed a distinct, unsettling shift in Loretta's tactics about a month before the Labor Day weekend. The direct complaints, the thinly veiled threats, the passive-aggressive comments overheard by neighbors, all ceased abruptly. They were replaced by an unnerving, watchful silence. When Ava and Loretta occasionally crossed paths while walking dogs or retrieving mail, Loretta became almost excessively, saccharinely polite, offering strained, brittle smiles and inquiring about Ava's well-being with a solicitousness that felt entirely false and deeply disquieting. This sudden, artificial cordiality set Ava's internal alarms ringing far louder than Loretta's previous overt hostility ever had. Something was definitely brewing beneath the placid surface. Acting on instinct, Ava spent an evening meticulously double-checking the angles, focus, and recording settings on her two pole-mounted security cameras, ensuring they provided complete, overlapping coverage of the entire expanse of the skate park and its immediate perimeter, a small, persistent knot of unease tightening in her stomach. She couldn't shake the feeling that Loretta was planning something clandestine. The hammer fell, quite literally, shattering the pre-dawn tranquility of the Friday preceding the long holiday weekend. Ava was jolted violently awake sometime around 4:30 a.m., not by the gentle chime of her alarm clock set for its usual 6 a.m. start, but by a deep, guttural, bone-jarring roar that seemed to vibrate not just through her bedroom walls, but up through the very foundation of her house, the unmistakable, brutally aggressive sound of heavy construction machinery operating somewhere extremely close by. Confused, disoriented, heart pounding with sudden adrenaline, she threw on a thin robe, stumbled out of bed, and rushed towards her back bedroom window, the one offering the clearest view of the skate park lot. Peering through the dim, gray, ethereal light of the dying night towards the park, her breath caught in her throat. Her heart plummeted into the icy depths of her stomach. A large, unmarked, mud-splattered flatbed truck, its diesel engine idling with a menacing rumble, was parked squarely, invasively, in the very middle of the lot. Powerful, glaring floodlights mounted high on its cab brutally illuminated a scene of swift, merciless destruction. Two burly men, silhouetted like demonic figures against the harsh, artificial glare, wielded powerful, industrial-grade pneumatic jackhammers, their bodies vibrating violently as they relentlessly, systematically pounded Ava's carefully sculpted, hand-finished concrete ramps and banks into jagged, unrecognizable rubble. Overseeing this shocking act of vandalism, standing near the truck with arms crossed, occasionally gesturing sharply with impatient commands, was the instantly recognizable, unmistakable figure of Loretta Caldwell. She was clad incongruously for the hour in the task in expensive, matching Lululemon athletic wear, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. Her face set in grim determination as she supervised the violent eradication of the community space she so thoroughly despised. A blinding surge of helpless, impotent rage washed over Ava, so intense it made her tremble. It was followed almost immediately by a wave of cold, calculating clarity. Storming out there now, confronting Loretta and the workers directly in the dark, would be utterly pointless, achieve nothing, and potentially even put her in physical danger. Loretta had clearly planned this ambush meticulously. Instead, Ava instinctively reached for her smartphone on the nightstand, her fingers flying across the familiar screen, accessing the live feed from her strategically placed security cameras. The high-resolution infrared images, designed for low-light conditions, were chillingly, devastatingly clear. They showed the silent arrival of the unmarked truck just moments earlier, the two workers immediately disembarking and commencing the demolition with brutal efficiency, clearly operating under Loretta's explicit, on-site direction. And then, captured with undeniable clarity as the first faint rays of actual dawn began to streak the eastern sky, painting the scene in slightly less infernal hues, the cameras recorded the crucial, damning detail: Loretta Caldwell, moving deliberately from the first worker to the second, discreetly, almost furtively, handing each of them thick, plain white, unmarked business-size envelopes. The exchange was brief, practiced, almost ritualistic, but the implication was stark and unavoidable. These weren't standard payroll checks being distributed. This felt fundamentally different, illicit, almost certainly under-the-table cash payments, perhaps a premium for performing a legally questionable job quickly, quietly before sunrise. Or perhaps kickbacks related to inflated invoices for ensuring the demolition was done without attracting official attention or requiring inconvenient permits. Ava's breath hitched. Her engineering mind instantly processed the significance of this visual evidence. She quickly initiated recordings, saving the entire sequence, backing it up immediately to multiple secure, encrypted cloud servers, creating redundant copies. She then watched, numb with a mixture of profound anger and grim fascination, as the systematic destruction continued with ruthless speed. Within the space of a single hour, every curve she had calculated, every transition she had smoothed by hand, every ramp the kids had helped her build and celebrate, every feature that had transformed the neglected lot into a place of joy and activity, was reduced to nothing more than a depressing pile of shattered concrete shards and twisted reinforcing wire. The flatbed truck, its destructive work complete, then rumbled away into the growing daylight, leaving behind a scene of utter, heartbreaking devastation. But the assault wasn't over. Almost immediately, as if part of a carefully orchestrated relay, a different crew arrived on site, a professional asphalt paving team, complete with heavy rollers and steaming trucks filled with hot blacktop. They worked with astonishing, almost military speed and precision, grading the rubble-strewn lot, spreading and compacting a thick, uniform layer of fresh, pungent asphalt over the entire area where the vibrant skate park had existed just hours before. By mid-morning, the transformation was brutally complete. The organic, community-built hub of activity was gone, erased as if it had never been, replaced by a sterile, empty, forbidding expanse of newly laid, still radiating heat blacktop. The final, exquisitely insulting touch came just before noon. A small pickup truck arrived, and two men quickly hammered two sturdy, official-looking metal signs firmly into the ground at the edge of the newly paved lot, facing the access lane. The signs featured crisp, professional lettering on a white background. They read, "Reserved parking, Oak Haven Estates HOA. Authorized VIP guests only. Unauthorized vehicles will be promptly towed at owner's expense. Survivors will be prosecuted." Okay, maybe not the last part, but the tone was certainly implied. The local teenagers, accustomed to their afternoon ritual, began arriving around 3:30 p.m., skateboards tucked expectantly under their arms, chattering excitedly about new tricks learned or weekend plans. They rounded the corner of Ava's fence line and stopped dead in their tracks, their laughter dying in their throats. Confusion morphed instantly into shocked disbelief, then quickly hardened into palpable anger and profound despair as they took in the scene. Their beloved, familiar park completely obliterated, vanished, replaced by the stark, forbidding expanse of black asphalt and the two arrogant signs claiming the space for Loretta's exclusive use. Ava, who had been watching for them, bracing herself, went out to meet them, her own simmering fury carefully masked beneath a calm, resolute exterior. The raw disappointment and anger radiating from the kids mirrored her own, creating an instant bond of shared outrage. She didn't need to offer lengthy explanations. She simply held up her tablet and played back the stark, undeniable security camera footage of the pre-dawn demolition, pausing dramatically on the clear images of Loretta Caldwell overseeing the destruction and crucially, handing over the suspicious white envelopes. She can't do this, exclaimed Leo Martinez, one of the older, more skilled skaters, a lanky, articulate kid who had spent countless hours helping Ava perfectly shape the trickiest transition section of the now demolished quarter pipe. He kicked savagely at the curb separating Ava's yard from the newly paved lot, his frustration boiling over. This lot isn't even hers. It's city property, right, Ava? How can she just bulldoze it and put up her stupid VIP parking signs? It's illegal. That, Ava said grimly, her voice low and tight with controlled anger, gesturing towards the damning video evidence still looping silently on her tablet screen, is exactly what we need to find out. And then, she added, a dangerous glint entering her eyes, we need to make sure everyone else finds out too. The footage of the cash handoffs wasn't just evidence. It was an insult. It suggested secrecy, potential corruption, a blatant disregard for rules that Loretta herself claimed to uphold so fiercely. It sparked an idea. A powerful, audacious concept began to form in her technically adept mind, a way to channel her white-hot anger not into futile confrontation, but into strategic, devastatingly public action, a way to leverage her own unique, specialized skill set to fight back. Loretta had used brute force, backdoor dealings, and darkness. Ava would counter with precision technology, verifiable truth, and the undeniable power of public exposure projected on the grandest possible scale. Over the next critical 2 weeks, while Loretta Caldwell, basking in the perceived success of her operation, circulated self-congratulatory emails within Oakhaven Estates, boasting about her decisive leadership in reclaiming and improving the formerly blighted and underutilized adjacent lot for the exclusive benefit and convenience of tax-paying Oakhaven homeowners and their esteemed guests, conveniently omitting any mention of the vibrant community skate park she had illegally destroyed, or its ambiguous ownership status. Ava Reynolds immersed herself in a different kind of demanding, meticulous project. This project didn't involve concrete or construction. It involved digital forensics, data mining, and careful reconnaissance. She spent countless hours hunched over her powerful workstation, digging methodically through layers of publicly available online city records, property deeds, historical zoning documents, archived permit applications, and, perhaps most fruitfully, the often deliberately vague Oakhaven Estates HOA's published annual budgets, meeting minutes, and vendor contracts, which, while sparsely detailed, occasionally contained revealing discrepancies or suspicious entries when cross-referenced. What Ava methodically uncovered, piece by digital piece, confirmed her initial suspicions and painted an even uglier, more damning picture of Loretta's calculated malfeasance. The demolition permit for the lot, hastily applied for and mysteriously fast-tracked through the city's notoriously slow permitting process just 2 days before the pre-dawn destruction, cited vague, unsubstantiated public safety concerns regarding unstable, unauthorized structures as justification. More significantly, the applicant listed on the permit wasn't the Oakhaven HOA itself, but a newly registered, opaque shell corporation named Prestige Property Solutions, LLC, an entity Ava, using online business registration databases and a few discreet inquiries, quickly traced back to Loretta Caldwell's own brother-in-law, a man with no known experience in construction or demolition. More damningly still, a careful forensic analysis of the publicly accessible Oakhaven HOA budgets for the past fiscal year revealed several significant, vaguely labeled expenditures allocated under opaque categories like Community Enhancement Projects, Phase 1, totaling $15,000, and multiple large payments listed under Event Logistics and Hospitality Consulting, amounting to over $25,000. These substantial sums seemed wildly disproportionate to any legitimate, documented HOA activities, and, suspiciously, their disbursement dates closely coincided with the timing of Loretta's widely publicized private galas hosted at her residence. Cross-referencing these budget lines with vendor payment records, Ava managed to partially reconstruct through careful online searches and a few strategically placed, anonymous inquiries revealed payments to high-end catering companies known for servicing exclusive private events, invoices for elaborate marquee and party tent rentals far exceeding any plausible HOA community need, and, the smoking gun, recurring, substantial payments directly from the Oakhaven HOA operating account to the very same Prestige Property Solutions, LLC, shell corporation that had obtained the questionable demolition permit. The inescapable conclusion was stark and infuriating. Loretta Caldwell wasn't just ruthlessly destroying a beloved community space to create convenient parking for her private parties. She was almost certainly using mandatory HOA dues, collected from her unsuspecting neighbors under the guise of community management, to secretly subsidize her personal social climbing ambitions, enrich her family members, and potentially provide illicit kickbacks to complicit contractors disguised as legitimate consulting fees. It was a textbook case of petty corruption and abuse of power. Ava meticulously compiled the mounting evidence into a compelling digital dossier. The high-resolution, time-stamped security camera footage of the demolition, crystal-clear still frames isolating the cash handoffs, copies of the suspiciously obtained demolition permit linked to the shell corporation, highlighted sections of the official HOA budgets juxtaposed pointedly against the questionable invoices and payments. Even carefully curated screenshots of Loretta's own social media posts, boasting about the exclusivity and success of her privately hosted galas. It formed a damning, irrefutable narrative of deceit, destruction, and financial impropriety. Now, she possessed the ammunition. All she needed was the right delivery system, the perfect, unignorable canvas to display the truth. Loretta Caldwell, meanwhile, utterly oblivious to Ava's meticulous counter-investigation and brimming with unwarranted self-confidence, was deeply engrossed in planning her own grand public unveiling. Believing her swift, decisive action regarding the problematic lot had been a triumph of leadership, she decided that her newly created community parking initiative, the sterile asphalt lot, deserved a formal dedication ceremony. Not content with a simple ribbon-cutting at the site itself, far too mundane and lacking in prestige, she envisioned a far more impressive, high-profile event. A sophisticated, black-tie optional, late-afternoon ceremony to be held not in the humble suburbs, but in the heart of the city, staged dramatically in the expansive Impo Singh Public Plaza directly in front of the stately, limestone-clad City Hall building itself. Leveraging her carefully cultivated network of contacts and calling in favors, she managed to secure the necessary permits and RSVPs. She invited the mayor, several influential city council members, heads of key city departments, prominent local business leaders, lifestyle columnists from the city newspaper, and, of course, the most important members of her own coveted social circle. This elaborate event wasn't truly about celebrating a parking lot. It was about Loretta publicly cementing her image as a dynamic civic leader, a powerful connector, a woman who got things done. A force to be reckoned within the city's corridors of power. The ceremony, complete with champagne reception and valet parking ironically, not using her new lot, was scheduled for the upcoming Friday evening, perfectly timed to catch the early evening news cycle. Ava discovered the details of Loretta's audacious City Hall ceremony plans quite by accident, when a thick, cream-colored, elegantly embossed invitation, clearly intended for a resident within the Oakhaven estate's boundary, was mistakenly delivered to her own modest mailbox. As she read the details, the prestigious location, the high-profile guest list, the self-aggrandizing tone celebrating Loretta's visionary contribution to community infrastructure, a slow, dangerous, razor-sharp smile spread across Ava's face. City Hall Plaza, dominated by the grand, imposing, multi-story limestone facade of the City Hall building itself, a wide, flat, relatively unadorned surface. It was, Ava realized with a jolt of professional excitement, the perfect canvas. Absolutely perfect. Immediately shifting gears, Ava began leveraging her own considerable professional expertise and extensive network of industry connections for a vastly different kind of production. She spent the next week deeply immersed in planning her counteroffensive, a projection mapping intervention designed for maximum impact and public exposure. She discreetly leased 4 state-of-the-art, concert-grade, high-lumen output digital projectors, the kind capable of throwing crisp, bright images across vast distances onto complex architectural surfaces even in ambient light conditions. Working late into the night in her home office, using highly specialized projection mapping software, architectural blueprints of City Hall obtained from public records, and sophisticated 3D modeling techniques, She meticulously designed and calibrated a seamless, building-sized video presentation incorporating the damning evidence she had compiled. The technical challenges were significant, accounting for the building's precise dimensions, window placements, architectural details, and the variable angles from the projector locations. Simultaneously, she had to secure permission, through discreet, trusted channels, calling in favors from contacts within the city's event management and building services departments. Individuals sympathetic to the cause of the destroyed skate park or perhaps simply intrigued by the sheer guerrilla audacity of her proposed plan to temporarily, covertly position the powerful projectors, along with their necessary power sources and control systems, on the flat rooftops of 3 adjacent commercial buildings that offered optimal, unobstructed sightlines overlooking the City Hall Plaza. The entire setup had to be installed under the cover of darkness, completely invisible to casual observers below, ready to be activated remotely at precisely the right moment during Loretta's ceremony. It was an incredibly complex, high-stakes technological gamble, requiring flawless planning, perfect timing, and impeccable technical execution. One glitch, one miscalculation, could ruin the entire effect. The evening of Loretta Caldwell's carefully orchestrated ceremony arrived, cloaked in the manufactured importance and self-congratulatory anticipation she so deeply craved. A temporary, bunting-draped stage and podium stood proudly positioned in the center of the City Hall Plaza, facing the imposing building facade. Well-dressed guests, a mixture of city officials, local power brokers, Oakhaven elites, and curious onlookers, mingled on the flagstones, sipping chilled champagne served by uniformed caterers under the warm, flattering glow of strategically placed rented outdoor heaters. Several local television news crews had set up cameras and lights on the periphery, anticipating a routine, slightly dull, feel-good story about civic improvement and HOA initiative. Loretta Caldwell herself, resplendent in a tailored, jewel-toned designer suit that likely cost more than Ava's monthly mortgage payment, moved confidently through the assembled crowd, accepting fawning congratulations, shaking hands, her smile wide, radiant, and utterly triumphant. She felt powerful, validated, basking in the reflected glory of municipal power and the admiring gazes of her peers. She was, in her own mind, invincible, untouchable, the star of the evening. Ava Reynolds, dressed unobtrusively in practical, dark clothing, watched the proceedings unfold from a strategic vantage point across the plaza, partially concealed behind a large decorative planter. She wasn't alone. Her small, trusted technical crew, 2 freelance lighting and projection specialists she often worked with on large commercial gigs, both sworn to secrecy and working pro bono out of a shared sense of outrage and creative mischief, were positioned with her, monitoring laptops displaying feeds from the rooftop projectors and awaiting her signal. Ava's heart pounded against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat fueled by a potent cocktail of nervous anxiety, righteous anger, and adrenaline-laced anticipation. Everything had to work perfectly. The timing had to be precise. There would be no second chances. Finally, after several minutes of mingling and manufactured buzz, the mayor, a portly, amiable man with a well-practiced politician's smile and a booming voice, stepped up to the flag-draped podium to officially begin the proceedings. He adjusted the microphone, cleared his throat, and beamed out at the assembled guests. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the City Council, honored department heads, distinguished guests, and members of the press, he began, his amplified voice echoing slightly across the plaza. We are gathered together on this beautiful evening to celebrate a truly shining example of exemplary community leadership, proactive problem-solving, and effective public-private partnership. He paused, turning to gesture warmly towards Loretta, who stood beside the podium, positively beaming, soaking in the accolades. Thanks to the remarkable vision, tireless dedication, and considerable personal efforts of the esteemed Oakhaven Estates Homeowners Association President, Ms. Loretta Caldwell, a formerly neglected and underutilized city property has been thoughtfully transformed into a valuable community asset, providing much-needed supplemental parking and significantly enhancing the aesthetic appeal of the surrounding neighborhood. As the mayor continued his effusive, pre-written platitudes, unknowingly lauding Loretta's entirely fictitious community spirit and dedication to civic improvement, Ava took a deep, steadying breath, raised her discreet handheld radio to her lips, and gave the almost imperceptible, prearranged signal to her waiting crew. Showtime, she whispered into the microphone. Initiate projection sequence. Mark. Now. On cue, as if responding to an invisible hand, the bright ambient floodlights illuminating the City Hall plaza subtly, smoothly dimmed, plunging the immediate area around the stage into a momentary, unexpected twilight. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Was this part of the ceremony? A power issue? And then, with breathtaking, almost shocking suddenness, the entire massive, multi-story limestone facade of City Hall, stretching hundreds of feet wide and several stories high, exploded into vibrant, inescapable light and meticulously choreographed motion. It wasn't random light. It was Ava's precisely mapped, incredibly bright, high-definition video projection, perfectly conforming to every window, column, and architectural detail, instantly transforming the venerable civic monument into a colossal, unavoidable, open-air movie screen displaying a story far different from the one being told at the podium. The projected content, designed by Ava for maximum clarity and impact, began its relentless, automated loop immediately. First, the stark, brutal, timestamp security camera footage of the pre-dawn demolition, the jarring sounds of jackhammers digitally amplified and subtly mixed into the plaza's sound system, a last-minute addition by Ava's audio tech. The concrete ramps crumbling under the assault, all illuminated by the harsh, invasive glare of the work truck's floodlights. Then, the video transitioned seamlessly into slow motion, digitally enhanced close-ups focusing tightly on Loretta Caldwell's clearly identifiable face, her expression grimly determined, as she moved from worker to worker, discreetly but undeniably handing over the thick, white envelopes. The image then dissolved, replaced by a high-resolution scan of the dubious demolition permit itself, the questionable safety concerns, justification clearly visible, alongside documentation highlighting the shell corporation applicant, Prestige Property Solutions LLC, with arrows explicitly linking it via public records to Loretta's brother-in-law. Next, pages downloaded directly from the Oakhaven HOA's own website, displaying the official annual budget, appeared on the massive screen. Specific, vague line items: community enhancement, $15,000, event logistics consulting, $25,000, contingency groundskeeping, $10,000, were highlighted in stark, accusatory red, juxtaposed directly against scanned copies of invoices Ava had obtained from Loretta's preferred high-end caterers, luxury marquee rental companies, and the financial smoking gun, copies of canceled checks showing substantial payments directly from the Oakhaven HOA operating account, funded by mandatory resident dues, made out to the very same Prestige Property Solutions LLC. The projected evidence painted an irrefutable picture of potential embezzlement and fraud. The final, devastating image in the constantly repeating loop was a simple, stark title card, white text on a black background, filling the entire City Hall facade. Oakhaven HOA dues, funding skate park demolition and VIP parties? Asked Loretta Caldwell. A collective, horrified gasp rippled through the assembled crowd as the projected images registered. Confused murmurs instantly erupted into shocked exclamations, quickly coalescing into a rising tide of angry shouts, jeers, and boos directed squarely at the podium and the woman standing beside it. The mayor faltered mid-sentence, his jaw dropping, staring utterly dumbstruck, horrified, at the damning public exposé playing out 50 feet high across the building directly behind him. Loretta Caldwell herself froze solid, her carefully cultivated triumphant smile dissolving instantly into a mask of sheer, uncomprehending, horrified disbelief. Her face drained of all color, turning a ghastly, pale shade as she recognized her own clandestine actions broadcast in humiliating detail for the entire city, including the assembled press and political elite, to witness. She opened her mouth, perhaps to deny, perhaps to scream, but no sound came out. She was utterly, publicly exposed. The meticulously planned dedication ceremony instantly descended into complete and utter chaos. Several city council members, instantly recognizing the unfolding political disaster and seeking to distance themselves, began backing away discreetly from the tainted stage. Crucially, two individuals standing near the back of the crowd, the same sharp-eyed auditors from the city's finance department, initially present merely to observe the dedication of a supposed public works improvement project, exchanged profoundly alarmed glances. They immediately stepped aside, pulling out their cell phones and began making urgent, hushed calls, presumably to their superiors and possibly to the city attorney's office or the police department's financial crimes unit. Within minutes, confirming the gravity of the situation depicted so publicly, even before Ava's projection loop had completed its third relentless cycle, two uniformed city police officers arrived briskly on the scene, navigating purposefully through the stunned, angry, and now rapidly dispersing crowd towards the chaotic nucleus around the podium. Ignoring Loretta's incoherent sputtering, her panicked denials now finding voice but lacking any credibility, its lies. A setup, doctored footage. The senior police officer spoke briefly, urgently with the visibly shaken mayor, and conferred quickly with the city auditors, who emphatically pointed towards the incriminating evidence still glaring down, undeniable, from the city hall facade. After a brief, tense exchange, captured by flashing news cameras, the officers approached the now trembling Loretta Caldwell directly. "Ma'am," the senior officer stated calmly but firmly, his voice brooking no argument. "You need to come with us down to headquarters right now. There appear to be some extremely serious allegations regarding potential fraud, felony destruction of property, possible embezzlement of funds, and conspiracy that require your immediate, formal statement and further investigation." As Loretta began to shriek hysterically about conspiracies, defamation lawsuits, and powerful friends who would ensure their badges were revoked, the officers, practiced in dealing with volatile individuals, firmly, professionally took her by the arms. They escorted her swiftly, decisively away from the podium, away from the smirking cameras, away from the disastrous, aborted ceremony, through the jeering remnants of the crowd, towards a waiting patrol car parked discreetly nearby. Her protests, increasingly desperate and unhinged, were drowned out by the rising chorus of boos from the onlookers and the frantic clicking of cameras from the suddenly galvanized, energized news crews who knew they had stumbled upon a major local scandal. News drones, alerted by scanner traffic or tips, began buzzing aggressively overhead, capturing dramatic aerial shots of the disgraced, handcuffed HOA president being placed into the back of the police car, while Ava's damning evidence continued its silent, relentless, devastating loop across the face of City Hall, broadcasting the raw, unvarnished truth for all the city, and soon the state, to see. The fallout from Loretta Caldwell's spectacularly public implosion was swift, widespread, and severe. The City Hall dedication ceremony was, of course, instantly, irrevocably canceled, leaving bewildered caterers packing up untouched trays of canapés. A full-scale municipal investigation, spearheaded by the city attorney's office and the police department's financial crimes unit, was launched that very night into Loretta Caldwell's personal and official activities. The Oakhaven Estates HOA's opaque finances stretching back several years, the circumstances surrounding the hastily issued demolition permit, and the potential complicity of the contractors and the shell corporation involved. City officials, scrambling to contain the political damage and demonstrate decisive action, moved quickly the very next morning to formally seize administrative control of the disputed lot behind Ava's house, issuing a public statement clarifying its status as public municipal land and condemning the illegal demolition in the strongest possible terms. News outlets across the state feasted voraciously on the juicy scandal, replaying Ava's projection footage endlessly, interviewing outraged neighbors and skaters, digging into Loretta's past controversies, and turning her overnight into a regional symbol of petty corruption, HOA overreach, and technologically aided public shaming. Facing an insurmountable mountain of irrefutable evidence, Ava's crystal-clear, time-stamped videos, the meticulously documented financial paper trail connecting HOA funds to her personal events and family members, sworn testimony from the now fully cooperating demolition contractors, eager to avoid prosecution themselves, and damning statements from numerous Oakhaven Estates residents who, finally freed from her intimidation, felt empowered to speak out about her past abuses of power. Loretta Caldwell's expensive legal defense strategy quickly crumbled. After months of legal maneuvering, facing the high probability of conviction on multiple felony counts at trial, she ultimately accepted a plea bargain. She pleaded guilty to reduced but still serious charges, including felony embezzlement of HOA funds and conspiracy, to commit destruction of public property. The judge, clearly appalled by the brazenness of her actions, imposed a sentence that included a significant period of actual jail time, though much of it was eventually suspended contingent upon successful completion of probation. 5 years of intensely supervised probation, mandatory ongoing psychological counseling focused on impulse control and ethical conduct, and, perhaps most significantly, massive court-ordered financial penalties and restitution orders. These substantial fines, levied personally against Loretta, were specifically earmarked by a unanimous city council resolution, a move widely praised by the public, to not only cover the full costs of the lengthy investigation, but also to fully fund the complete, professional design and reconstruction of the community skate park that Loretta had so maliciously destroyed. As a final, definitive nail in the coffin of her public life, the plea agreement included a legally binding condition permanently barring her from ever again serving on any homeowners association board or holding any similar fiduciary position within the state. Her carefully curated world, built on a foundation of intimidation, manipulation, and misused funds, had collapsed utterly into ruin, public disgrace, and lasting legal consequence. The reconstruction of the officially renamed Riverside Community Skate Park began within weeks of Loretta's sentencing, this time with proper city permits, enthusiastic community support, and, crucially, adequate professional funding. Skilled skate park designers, hired by the city, consulted extensively and respectfully with Ava Reynolds and the local teenagers, including Leo Martinez and his friends, incorporating their ideas for flow, features, and obstacles into the final plans. The resulting park, built with high-quality materials and incorporating elements for various skill levels, emerged better, safer, more extensive, and far more creatively designed than Ava's original, beloved but improvised version ever could have been. It stood as a tangible symbol of the community reclaiming its space and transforming a negative event into a positive, lasting asset. 6 months later, on a bright, breezy Saturday afternoon in late spring, a different kind of ceremony took place at the gleaming, newly completed skate park. There were no black ties, no pretentious champagne flutes, just sunshine, the excited chatter of teenagers eager to christen the new concrete, proud parents snapping photos, supportive neighbors sharing donuts from a local bakery, and city officials looking genuinely happy and relieved to be participating in a positive community event. The mayor, looking considerably less stressed than during his last public appearance related to this particular piece of land, presented Ava Reynolds with a framed civic commendation acknowledging her courage, her ingenuity, and her unwavering dedication to her community. He praised her actions as a model of responsible civic engagement, conveniently glossing over the city's own prior neglect of the lot. Then, flanked by Ava and an ecstatic Leo Martinez representing the local skaters, the mayor wielded a pair of oversized ceremonial scissors and cut a bright red ribbon strung playfully across the entrance to the gleaming new concrete bowl, officially opening the park to thunderous applause and cheers. As the first wave of eager skaters dropped into the bowl, their wheels humming smoothly across the pristine surfaces, carving graceful lines and launching into tentative aerial maneuvers, the late afternoon sun began its slow descent towards the horizon, casting long shadows across the revitalized space. And on a large, temporary projection screen set up discreetly at the edge of the park by Ava and her volunteer crew, a final, poignant projection began to play. It wasn't damning evidence this time, it was pure celebration. It was a dynamic, joyful, constantly looping montage showcasing images Ava had collected over the past year, snapshots of the teenagers helping her build the original park, laughing together, footage of them mourning its destruction, looking lost and angry, photos documenting the professional reconstruction process, and finally, vibrant, high-energy clips of the skaters themselves, young and old, boys and girls, experts and novices, all beaming with exhilaration as they explored and conquered the features of their brand-new, hard-won park. It was a silent, powerful, moving testament to community resilience, the enduring power of creative resistance, and the deeply satisfying victory of light, both literal projection light and the figurative light of truth and justice, over calculated darkness, corruption, and petty tyranny. Loretta Caldwell, stripped of her power, her reputation, and a significant portion of her wealth, was already fading into an embarrassing local anecdote, the vibrant, indomitable spirit of the Riverside Community Skate Park, reborn from the rubble and reimagined through collective effort, was undeniably, gloriously, and noisily alive.